How's it going, everyone? We have a bunch of PlayStation updates to go over in this video. Yes, while PlayStation and Sony have confirmed that no major franchise will be getting a new title in fiscal year that's coming up 2024 into 2025, which is super upsetting, there will be some smaller exclusives and obviously the third-party deals. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to ask you guys, please like this video and do leave a comment with your thoughts. It really does help out the channel a lot, and it is much appreciated. As noted on PSU, hot off the news that PlayStation won't have any game release from the franchise it sees as major IPs, Jeff Grubb does say that there will be titles. He noted in a response, and there are other unannounced games from established IPs, and he specifically noted a new Astrobot game, which I don't think people are going to get too excited about, especially if it's a PlayStation VR only game. I mean, VR 2, as incredible as it is from a hardware standpoint, it's just a $500 headset and a lot of people are not going to buy it. I get it that it's a double-edged sword of if you don't put good games on VR, then nobody's going to buy VR, but if it's VR only, then the people that have no plans on buying VR are going to be upset as well. There's a new Metro game coming to VR and people are upset about that as well. You can't please everybody. That is just the reality of when you have a VR component as an accessory device to a console. It's a super expensive platform, but nonetheless, I do expect lesser franchise, and when I say lesser, I don't necessarily mean from a quality standpoint. Hell, you could say Gravity Rush is a lesser franchise. It just does not have that, mass appeal that some of the other Sony IPs have. But obviously, I don't expect us to get a new Gravity Rush game. I mean, if we got Gravity Rush 3 this year, bro, screw everything else. I'd be okay with that being the only PlayStation exclusive coming out this year, a major, Sony release coming out this year. If you gave me a Gravity Rush 3, I would, literally change my tune for how I feel about Sony and first party, but, I don't expect we're gonna get any major PlayStation first party reveals, and yes, I do know that Naughty Dog is working on a new IP. I don't think that's gonna come out this year. I don't think that's any stretch, to say that whatsoever, given that that game has not even been officially revealed, given that we are now into February of 2024. Generally speaking, Sony and new games, they announce them pretty well in advance. Spider-Man 2, Horizon, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima. Look at when all of those games were announced and when they were ultimately released. The only exception is when they announce games for the lead up to a console's release. For example, the PlayStation 5 came out in 2020. They held the event to announce the PS5 in June of 2020, and they announced a bunch of games. Miles Morales, Demon's Souls, so on and so forth. And the same thing happened with the PlayStation 4 back in 2013, where they announced Killzone Shadowfall. That game was out in the fall. Infamous Second Son, that game was out in March of the following year. You get the idea, but unless a new console is in the mix, games from PlayStation first party generally are announced at least a year, usually well over that. I want to say Ghost of Tsushima was announced in the fall of 2017 or fall of 2016, and then it came out in 2020. So think about that for a second, and that goes with a lot of other games. Forbidden West, for example, was announced in June of 2020 as well, along with the PS5. Didn't come out until February of 2022. God of War Ragnarok, announced in 2020, didn't come out until fall of 2022. If a game is not announced at this point, very doubtful that it's going to be a major release that's a stealth release. I do think more publishers should go that direction instead of announcing games 7-8 years in advance. I mean, look at Dragon Age. Dragon Age Dreadwolf has been announced for 5 years now, and hopefully the game will be out by this fall, but I even doubt that. And, for some reason, BioWare thought it would be cute to announce a new Mass Effect in, 2020. Come on now, what are we doing here? I get it that there's the argument of, oh, they need to get people excited, and they need to get, people to file applications or apply for job positions, etc., etc. But I just think, man, we're announcing these games sometimes a little bit way too early. And then also add to the fact that these game development cycles, and I'm a broken record when talking about this, but they've gone just so long that, developers in the past, they would turn around in 2 years, 3 years tops. Look at what happened in 09. I know I constantly go back to 09 to 13, but look at a Naughty Dog. What were they doing from 2007 to 2013? 2007, they dropped Uncharted 1. 2009, Uncharted 2. 2011, Uncharted 3. 2013, The Last of Us Part 1. That was all in a 6-year stretch. You're never getting that again from these top-level studios because the games have gotten so big. I would argue that if I look at a 6-year stretch for the entire Uncharted trilogy and Last of Us 1, that blows out of the water everything that Naughty Dog has done in the last 6 years. That's just my humble opinion as somebody that's been playing all their games. You look at the stretch of the games that BioWare put out in that time period, obviously it blows out everything they've done in the last 6 years. Even Guerrilla, as much as I loved Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, those two were released in a 5-year stretch. In a 3.5-year stretch, Guerrilla put out Killzone 2, Killzone 3, and Killzone Shadowfall, and obviously Horizon's a totally different ballgame, but you were just getting more titles from these developers that you were never having a quiet period. It just would not happen because you were rotating in games so quickly between these different developers that you didn't have to wait that long. And Insomniac, while they were a partnered like second-party studio for Sony at that time, I want to say it was 2006 they put out Resistance Fall of Man, 2007 was Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction, 2008 was Resistance 2, 2009 was Crack in Time, and I want to say 2010 was Resistance 3. Don't quote me on that, it might have been 2011 for Resistance 3. But even as consistent as a studio like Insomniac is, and they're doing a phenomenal job, I still look at the late 2000s for them. Their consistency back then, they were turning out games like nobody's business back then, and they get a lot of shine today because I feel like they stand out where a lot of developers do take 5 to 6 years to get out games, and they're churning these games out a lot quicker than that. But even Insomniac, their rollout for these games have gotten slower, and that's what's gonna happen when the scale of these games gets so big. But man, can you think about it? In like a 5-year stretch to get the entire Resistance trilogy and to get all of those Ratchet future games, like that's ridiculous. And Insomniac managed that in like a half-decade, which is just insane to think about. Nowadays, most developers are putting out one game in a half-decade, and Insomniac was out there putting out the entire Resistance trilogy and Ratchet Future. Like, it was ridiculous what Insomniac was pulling off back then. But we're living in different times, to say the least. I do imagine that we might get a DLC here and there. Like, Spider-Man 2 might get some DLC content for that. And again, probably some of these smaller games and potential new IPs, but I just don't see anything big budget. That's why I think Sony has gotten so heavy into these third-party agreements, because you look at early 2024, FF7 Rebirth, Rise of Ronin, Stellar Blade, those are 3 massive games. FF7 Rebirth is really the one where it's just a meme-timed exclusivity. That's not even a real exclusive. Like, let's be honest here. They just paid a lot of money. That game was going to come out regardless, but in the case of Rise of Ronin and Stellar Blade, they are directly publishing those games, so I give them a little bit more value as far as that's concerned. And obviously, when we talk about development times being longer, it's also an element of a lot of games internally probably were pushed back a little bit based on their heavy emphasis on live service titles. Live service games was going to be a big part of Naughty Dog. They were working on that Last of Us multiplayer project. You telling me that didn't push back whatever they're working on outside of that? I would imagine that it did. And maybe it incentivized them to do Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 remaster just so they had content rolling out. And outside of new IPs, stuff that's already announced, like Concord probably will come out this year, and Helldivers 2 did exceedingly well, so I'm not here to say live service entirely is going to be bad. Helldivers 2 is a live service game. Everybody loves it. I love it. It's a fantastic game, but obviously it is a little bit of a stray from what Sony has done in the past in terms of their big first-party releases. But given that we got Helldivers 2, you're gonna get FF7 Rebirth, you're gonna get Rise of the Ronin next month, and Stellar Blade, there's been a lot of big PlayStation-centric titles that have been coming out. It's just those core studios, you're not seeing them drop anything. Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla, so on and so forth. You don't have a Sony Japan in the mix, and Bluepoint, maybe they're working on a new IP, maybe they'll stealth launch it, but I don't see that coming out this year either. But that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Do expect some PlayStation IP releases, just smaller games, and potentially DLC and content like that. And also, obviously, they're gonna do a lot of PC releases. Hiroki Totoki, in that conference call, it really does seem like he's gonna put more emphasis into multi-platform releases, and they're gonna try to expand that way. And I think that's a great idea in terms of increasing your revenue stream in a year that's probably gonna be pretty light on major first-party releases. Why not port a Spider-Man 2, a God of War Ragnarok to PC? Those games are going to do exceedingly well on PC, and you can get some additional revenue and a revenue stream that way. I think, waiting 2 to 3 years to port some of these games, like Ratchet Rift Apart was never going to light the world on fire on PC. It just wasn't going to happen. $60 2 years after release, that's just not going to fly. You got to get a quicker turnaround on these games. And some games are going to do well regardless of God of War Ragnarok, but I think they would do even better on PC if it was a quicker turnaround. But that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.